watching so much Charlotte Dobre lately that I forgot how to do my own intro, and I was just about to go, hi, everybody. What do I say? You'd think after doing this for like 3 years, intros would get less awkward and uncomfortable for me, but they don't. Did I forget to take this tag off? Oh, that's embarrassing. Oh, wow. There's even like an envelope on here. Thank God I didn't go out in public. Hello, my loves, my Sippendales. I have to make a correction. I made a mistake when I was asking what our thoughts were on the whole Sippendale name. I thought Christy had come up with it, but she brought it to my attention that it was Andrea. So Andrea, thank you for coming up with Sippendales. It's brilliant. I also have to acknowledge that I don't know why, as a 35-year-old woman, I immediately went to the Chipmunks like a child, and everybody else got the point and went to the strippers. They're Chippendales. Yeah, the Chippendale strippers. Are they the Chippendales? Yeah. See, I'm still going to the Chipmunks. Andrea, you have to let me know where your head was at. Was it at the Chipmunks as well? Or was it at the strippers? Anyways, regardless, the consensus is Sippendales is here to stay, and I couldn't be more excited about it. So perfect. Another thing I want to acknowledge, some of you have been asking if I am with child again, because I haven't been having my usual bevy, and I'm not. It's just that I've been filming really early in the day lately, and I was sick there for a while, so I just wasn't even feeling my regular drink. And today, again, I'm filming quite early, but I want to participate in, the get-together vibe. So I put my water in a wine glass. Just to clarify, we are not with child again, nor will we ever be if the procedure Brent underwent works correctly. We have decided we are done with children. So Hales, Oriana, and Reverie shall be the only three. I love to live vicariously through all of you, though. For anybody who's having children, I love to be the internet auntie. So give me all the babies. All right, I think that's everything. We're going to get started. Before we do, I have a message for you. I want to give a big, huge, massive thank you to our sponsor today, HelloFresh. Everyone who has been here for a long time knows I love me some HelloFresh. Been a HelloFresh fan long before HelloFresh wanted to support me. So it's always just like the icing on the cake. You see how that was like a food reference? But it is when a brand wants to work with you that you love. Some of you know I'm on this journey of just being more conscious of what I'm eating, because I'm not going to lie. I tend to go and order takeout several times a day. It got out of hand. It wasn't good. We were in a really good routine of having our meals prepped, doing HelloFresh, and then we moved, and I just used it as an excuse to stop. So now HelloFresh is helping me get back on my goals. It feels so good when you have this home-cooked meal that you've made. My problem, though, is I don't ever know what to make. I also don't like going up and down the halls in the grocery aisle. I feel overwhelmed because I'm like, okay, well, like what ingredients do I grab here to make this? It's so amazing how much HelloFresh has expanded their menu. They have over 50 market and menu items to choose from these days. So having my only struggle being which option I need to choose, because there are just like too many good ones to choose from, it's not a bad problem to have. I've said it before, I will say it again. Their food is so delicious. I cook things that I would never think to cook myself. And I'm always so proud of myself when I'm done, because I'm like, I made that. There's tons of options for you, whether you're vegetarian, pescatarian, family friendly, so that the nuggets will want to eat everything as well, and it's not just too out there for their palate. They also have options to fit in your lifestyle. So if you are really short on time, they have the quick and easy meals. Maybe you don't like a lot of cleanup, you can do the easy cleanup. You can also choose ones that just have low prep options. One of my faves from last week was the speedy Tuscan beef ragu. I'm salivating just thinking about it again. It was so good. It was so hearty, super quick to make, and I had a lot of fun doing it. My sister came over. We cooked it up together as a nice lunch. It was so fun, so effortless. I love that everything is just pre-packaged, measured for you, less work to do preparing, less cleanup, and less wasted food. Because I don't know if you know this, but Big Guy, he doesn't like leftovers. And HelloFresh cuts down your waste by at least 25% compared to shopping at a grocery store, which I can personally say I feel like that percent is a lot higher in our house from when we grocery shop. If you're leftover people though, that's okay too, because you can increase your box sizes so that the meals are bigger and have some for lunch the next day. If you've been thinking about trying HelloFresh, this is your sign to do it. Go to HelloFresh.com and use my code Sherilyn16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Once again, that's HelloFresh.com and use the code Sherilyn16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Thank you again, HelloFresh. You're just mwah! Chef's kiss. Alrighty, riddle time. The more these are taken, the more they are left behind. What are they? I feel like you guys are gonna get that one pretty fast. I don't get any of them if it makes any of you feel better. So I just get to enjoy how brilliant you all are when you figure them out. And even when you don't figure them out, the answers that you do give make sense and I enjoy them. All right, let's get started. Today's case took me on an emotional roller coaster. As I was researching, I would come up with new pieces of information through each source of material that I was finding. And it wasn't just little tidbits, because that happens a lot, but it was bombs that were being dropped. I was like, hey, whoa. Where was that in the last article or the last document I just read? It would bring up a potential other death that was connected to this person and then just end. And I was like, whoa, okay, what about that one? And then I'd have to go and find what I could on there, on that situation. And what's crazy is all of this was almost never discovered. This person almost got away with murder multiple times, but it was a body that was exhumed 17 years after they died that blew the whole case like wide open. I think the best way to start this is to start with the case and the disappearance of a woman that kind of unearthed everything. Today we are heading to Arlington, Texas, which was the newish home to a woman named Emilita Villas. She was born in the Philippines but had wanted a better life for herself and her family, so she moved to America to marry her husband, a man named Jack Reeves. Texas provided a life for her that she could only dream of in the Philippines. Back home, she was living in essentially a tin shack with her whole family. There was no plumbing, no running water. Well, that's plumbing, I think, Sherilyn. Her entire family was sharing one mattress. If you ever watch 90 Day Fiance, they show a lot of these types of living situations. And I appreciate shows like that, not just for, let's face it, the entertainment value of it, but actually it does show you how so many people live around the world. And something you do see a lot in there is these family members in these areas of poverty, and they're encouraging their loved ones to go for it, make a relationship work with somebody in America, for example, and have a better life. And this is what Emilita did. When she was 18 years old, she submitted an ad to a dating magazine, I guess like a mail order bride magazine. It was called Cherry Blossoms. This was back in the days, in the early 90s, when there wasn't like POF or Tinder or anything like that. You would write up your ad, post your photo in a magazine. It'd have all your information on it, and then someone looking for companionship in your area would find you on there, reach out, and you would start writing letters back and forth. And this is what Jack Reeves did. He found Emilita in Cherry Blossoms, reached out to her, and pretty quickly decided that he wanted to fly out to the Philippines to meet her and her family. Jack was 47 years old. He was a widower and 28 years older than Emilita. He had a long career in the military, but was now working as a contractor for his own painting company. He flies out to the Philippines, goes to meet Emilita and her family sees him as a wealthy man that can take her away from the life that she's living, and so they encourage her to go for it. Allegedly, Emilita wasn't feeling it at first. She was under the impression that Jack was a little bit younger than he portrayed himself to be, and she felt pretty uncomfortable about the age gap. But her nature was to take care of everybody around her. So she felt like marrying him was a good opportunity, not just for herself, but to send money back to her family and be able to provide a better life than what they're living in currently. So she goes for it. She moves to Texas with Jack, and 4 months after they arrive, they get married. Emilita was really lonely when she first arrived. She had no family come with her. She had no friends. So she was really thankful when not long after she arrived, she found a really tight-knit group of friends who also had immigrated to America from the Philippines, and they became her new family out there. She spent a lot of time with her friends. It sounds like her and Jack kind of lived separate lives. He was more of a homebody, kept to himself. Emilita spent a lot of her time with her friends, going out during the day and some evenings. I just got the impression that she was really trying to find stability, find security and comfort in America, being away from her family, and wanted a family. So 2 years into their marriage, Emilita gets pregnant, which should be a super exciting time. But instead of being happy, Jack loses his mind and he sends Emilita back to the Philippines and accuses her of having an affair behind his back. I can't imagine what that would have even felt like. She's devastated, goes back home, delivers a baby boy that she names Kendall. And it sounds like it was one of those scenarios where the baby comes out looking exactly like the father. You pretty much don't need a DNA test to prove like who the father is. That happened with Oriana when I had her. So I guess that also happened here. And Emilita sent a photo of Kendall back to Jack to show him his son. It had been 2 years though since they were away, and I guess Jack saw the photo and was like, oh, okay, that's my boy. So after them being gone for 2 years, he flies them back to America. After Emilita and Kendall come back, she and Jack work on rebuilding their relationship, becoming a family. Jack had 2 older sons from his second marriage though, so this wasn't his first rodeo, but it was the first time Emilita was a mother, and she was described as so sensitive, just naturally a mother, very nurturing and caring, which was really no surprise to people who knew her, especially her new friends out in America, because she was the same way as a friend, just very loving, always available to talk to you and put other people first. And it's because she was always available, always that friend that was in communication with you. Her friends knew something was going on when they hadn't heard from her for a day on October 12th, 1994, and they go to the police station to report her missing. We've talked about this before, but I wonder at what point my friends would be concerned if I didn't reply, because I'm the worst. The police agreed to go and do a welfare check on Emilita. They get to her and Jack's house and Jack answers. They let him know that there's this call for concern of her safety that came in, and Jack's not concerned at all. He says that this is typical behavior of Emilita. It's not unusual for her to go not missing, just out for 2 or 3 days and then come back home. So opposite of what her friends are saying, but the detective can't really dispute it. He doesn't know Emilita. So he leaves, but he decides he's not just gonna shut this down, move on with the day and the next case. He keeps the file open and wants to close it only when he physically can see and talk to her. And I respect this so much because unfortunately, we've seen a lot of cases on this channel where that doesn't happen. Especially when it was someone who's born in a different country, it's so easy to just kind of write it off and say, oh, they probably moved back home and they don't want to be found. So the detective gives it a couple days, goes back to Jack and Emilita's, and she's still not back. At this point, they're not just going to leave without more information. They say, all right, it's been way longer than the 2 days that you said that she usually leaves for. What do you think happened? Jack says he believes she's alive and well and that she ran off with a good friend of hers, a woman named Mona Lisa, not that Mona Lisa, who he suspected had been Emilita's friend, but now their relationship had turned romantic. Mona Lisa was the woman who initially reported Emilita missing. So at first the detective's like, well, it doesn't really make a lot of sense that she's the one who called it in, missing, but it's not the first time that somebody would report somebody missing and they're very well aware of where they are. They call Mona Lisa back. They say, listen, this is what Jack's saying. And she admits that there was a time where the two of them had gotten a little bit more intense in their friendship and had a brief romantic relationship, but they decided they were far better off friends. And since their group of friends were so close, they didn't want anything to risk that and make it uncomfortable for everybody. So they were friends. However, she was aware that Emilita was seeing somebody else. It was a man who worked at a bar that they all frequented. And she admits that she knows Emilita is in this bit of a rebellious streak right now because she found out that while she and her son were away in the Philippines, being cast away because Jack didn't believe that Kendall was his son, he had a woman that he brought from the Ukraine living in the house for those years that she was gone. And she was pissed, but she decided to deal with it by being, two can play that game. So that's when she started her fling with Mona Lisa and then started seeing this other gentleman. Mona Lisa says even though things had ended between the two of them, they were able to remain very close, which is what they wanted. They were in contact multiple times throughout the day, and the last time Mona Lisa saw Emilita was around 7 p.m. on October 11th when Emilita drove Mona Lisa to her job at Jack in the Box. Mona Lisa's understanding of what Emilita's plans were just to drop her off, go back home for a bit, and then come and pick her up again from Jack in the Box because this was their normal routine. Mona Lisa didn't drive, Emilita did, so she was usually the one to shuttle her back and forth. But Mona Lisa says this day, around 10 p.m., Emilita calls the restaurant and she says, I am not going to be able to pick you up today. I have a phone call that I have to take with my family in the Philippines, so I will talk to you after you get home. Give me a shout when you've arrived back at home from work, sorry about it, I'll talk to you later. After her shift, she tries calling Emilita several times but doesn't get through. Other friends of theirs also try to call and there's no answer. And then Mona Lisa said around midnight she calls again, and this time Jack picks up, but she hangs up because she doesn't want to talk to him at all. And that was the last time she ever got an answer on Emilita's phone. A couple days after she's reported missing, her Pathfinder is found abandoned in a parking lot. And this just sends everybody into a tailspin. It's not normal for her to not answer a page, not call anyone back, and then just to abandon her vehicle and her son and her life. They knew something awful had happened. At this point, they did anything that they could to get the word out there about Emilita's disappearance. They took out an ad in the newspaper. They went on the news. They started printing posters, just plastering them all over the city. With the word spreading, Emilita's disappearance receiving more exposure and detectives talking to more people, each time they ask somebody what they think happened, the response they get is, dun dun dun, the husband, quelle surprise. Several of her friends said that Emilita told them she had gotten to the point where she was ready to take her son and leave Jack. And it was only days before her disappearance that she told them, if I ever don't answer a phone call or a page, call the police. Emilita told them she had become very unhappy in her relationship with Jack, not just because of what she found out while she was away in the Philippines, but Jack made her do very demoralizing things behind bedroom doors, and he would take photos of her and humiliate her. And it got to the point where she just couldn't take it anymore. Her friends said she told them that Jack agreed to the divorce under the condition of her just waiting a couple months until after Christmas. They said she wasn't too keen on it initially, but they came to an agreement that if she stayed, he would help support her and give her, I think it was $30,000 to settle the divorce. And he also agreed to help her family back home and send money to them every month because he was already sending a couple $100s a month at this point. So he would allow that to continue. So for a few weeks, she decides to wait it out. But the last she had told her friends was she couldn't even do that anymore. It wasn't worth waiting it out because she said Jack had gotten physical with her recently and pulled her hair and dragged her in the house because she didn't want to go on a camping trip with him. As information's coming in, they are still always going back and touching base with friends and Jack. And he's telling detectives, keep looking at Mona Lisa. But they eventually say, give it up, man. She's got an alibi. She was at work that night. It wasn't her. They're building this rapport with him, though, entertaining him a little bit. They realize he likes to talk a lot about himself. He also says very out there, uncomfortable things about women he's hooked up with. So they try to use this angle of him talking about himself to see if they can pull any information. And it's there that they realize he had been married previously for 18 years and his wife had taken her life on July 20th, 1978. Her name was Sharon Vaughn. She and Jack had lived in Copperas Cove, Texas. They had 2 sons and she was just a gem among the locals who also lived there. The word used to describe her most was just a real sweetheart, always smiling, happy, full of life, and everybody loved her. So the detective looking for Emilita reaches out to the detectives out in Copperas Cove. And there is a file on Sharon, but there's not really anything to it. It's basically this little card that says that she had committed suicide. There also happened to be one photo of the crime scene. It was just a photo of Sharon laying on the bed, but that was it. There was no medical examiner report, no forensic report, nothing from first responders. There's just nothing to go off of. But when the detective from Copperas Cove finds out that this new detective is investigating a disappearance of his 4th wife and things are looking a little bit questionable, he's like, hey, do you mind coming out and talking with some of the detectives who were on Sharon's case? A lot of them are already retired because it's been 18 years, but if there's any way that we can, put our heads together and figure something out, we'd like to help. The case stuck out to these previous detectives because there was something about the way that Sharon was found that was unsettling to them. She was on the bed, undressed, just laying down with the shotgun between her legs and an injury to her chest. Jack's explanation of what happened that afternoon was that he was outside in the front yard playing with his son and he heard the sound of a shotgun, ran into his bedroom and found Sharon that way. The whole scene looked very peculiar to the detectives, but Jack seemed to have it all figured out. He figured she had positioned herself to use her toe to fire off the gun, and that's how she shot herself with this big shotgun. There's really not much to say except for that they hadn't seen a case like this where somebody took their life in this way. It's not unheard of though. And from what Jack was saying, they started to believe that maybe this was what Sharon wanted. When Jack and Sharon were married, he was still a part of the army, and her friends would say when he was stationed somewhere and away from the house, Sharon came alive. She thrived more and she was more confident. It was never really anything anybody talked about. On the outside, they appeared to be a very well-matched couple. Sharon was your housewife who loved church, and Jack was the good-looking army guy. These were just slight observations that people noticed whenever he would leave. It was on Jack's last assignment to Korea when Sharon fills her friends in a little bit about what's going on and why she's got a little bit more pep in her step. She tells them she had met another officer and was the happiest she had ever been in her life. Her friend said as she was explaining him, her face would just light up and she was full-blown head over heels in love. His name was John Beeman, and they started their affair in 1977, and just less than a year of them being an item, they decided they wanted to get married. The problem is that Jack's stationed in Korea, and Sharon wants to have this conversation with him to his face. But before she gets a chance to do that, her lover John is assigned to Thailand. It got to the point where the distance was just too much for Sharon, so her friends said she decided to just call Jack and tell him over the phone that she was falling in love with somebody else and wanted a divorce. And then her plan was to go out to Thailand and meet John there. Days after this call, Jack shows up to the house unexpectedly. Sharon told her friend she wasn't really sure what to do because she had already made up her mind, but Jack wasn't having it. And even Jack and Sharon's boys knew something was going on. They didn't know the specifics about it, but remember this time when he came home that there was a lot of yelling in the house, primarily coming from Jack. The day Sharon shot herself, their son said he was outside playing in the front yard, and to his knowledge, only his mother and father were in the house. He says he doesn't remember hearing a shot, but he does remember his dad running out and screaming for him. And then he goes into the bedroom with his father and sees his mother unresponsive on the bed. Sharon taking her life shocked absolutely everybody in her life. Nobody wanted to accept it. And even though the officers didn't know who she was, they were having a hard time accepting it too, but they felt like they didn't really have a choice because Jack brings to them what they initially believe is a suicide note. The note allegedly acknowledged the fact that she did love two men, and the situation was really painful for her because she didn't want anybody to get hurt. And in the note, she apologizes to Jack. I guess after the fact, the note could be interpreted in other ways, not really like, I'm sorry, this is the situation, I can't go on anymore because I'm torn. It was more like, okay, I am hurting because I don't want anybody else to hurt. Yes, I care about two men, but I've made my mind up. I'm in love with somebody else, and I'm sorry you're hurting, not I'm sorry I've got to do this to myself and hurt you further. It was like, I gotta leave, sorry. Because there's no way to ask her what the interpretation of this note is, and I guess it could be seen as a suicide note because she's acknowledging this affair and that she's sorry and that she's feeling pain. No one wants to dispute it, so the case is closed. Then when people in Sharon's life find out that there's a new detective involved in a disappearance of another one of Jack's wives, they start to come forward like, yes, finally. This new detective finds out that the day before her death on July 19th, 1978, a divorce decree was signed. So she was very comfortable with her decision of wanting a divorce, was going through with it, and prepared to move to Thailand. The detective also learns that it wasn't suicide that was on Sharon's mind, but fear of Jack that was really prominent. A coworker of Sharon said she was always the light in any room, very vivacious, but after Jack returned from Korea, she just withdrew from everybody, always was quiet and just seemed to be in her own head going over scenarios. Sharon's best friend and lover John also said the same. John said that his last conversation with Sharon, she did mention that she was really worried about how he was going to react, and she just felt uncomfortable with the uncertainty of his response and acceptance of everything. Because there wasn't a lot to go off of forensically, since nothing had been saved or reported and the gunshot wound had never been examined, they make the decision that Sharon's body needs to be exhumed so that they can do an autopsy, which was a tricky spot because Jack was her husband, so he's the next of kin, and they don't want him to know what's going on. But they find out that Sharon's 84-year-old father is still alive, and they're able to go to him and ask for permission without Jack knowing. Even though that has to be such a emotional decision to make, her dad was just so emotional and so thankful, and he said to the detectives, "Thank goodness this day came. I know he did something to her." With her father's permission, Sharon's body is exhumed on December 14th, 1994, and the detectives are pretty hopeful when they see her casket being raised because they see that it's this nice metal casket. So they're hoping that it's been able to preserve her remains throughout all of these years. They're in the room when the casket opens, and I guess just the hair on their arm sticks up because as it opens, it's almost like she's in this time capsule where they're brought back to the 70s again, just based on like her hair and the clothing. And so they're really hopeful that they're going to get some answers. One of the main things that wasn't sitting right with the medical examiner is there was no gunshot powder that he could find anywhere on her body. He figured if there wasn't an autopsy performed or any evidence that was taken forensically, that should still all be there, or just at least some remnants. Another was that she had this huge deep gash on her toe, and Jack initially explained it by saying, oh, that must have been the toe that she used to pull the trigger and just like the kickback from the gun cut it. But that medical examiner had never seen an injury like that from somebody firing a gun, even if they did, get bruised or nicked or something. To him, it looked like somebody purposely, cut this deep gash in the toe to appear like it happen that way. After examining Sarian, he was able to look at this sole photograph of the scene as well. And the first thing that stood out to him was that the blood pattern just didn't seem consistent with her sitting on the bed trying to maneuver this gun to her and using her toe and falling back. He said it was very evident from the photo that the blood pattern on her legs shows the blood dripping downwards. So he says she would have been standing, which is impossible with the angle of the wound to her chest because it's not an upward angle. If she was standing and she used her toe, it would have gone like this, where her wound was straight on, which means she would have needed to be standing and then maneuver her leg in the air like that and holding things straight. No. I mean, I guess it could have been done. However, it couldn't have been done with Sarian because she was too short. If she was standing and she needed to hold the gun straight on for that angle to match up with the wound, her foot wouldn't have been able to reach the trigger. So if she wasn't able to be the one to reach the trigger, that means that somebody else who was in the house would have needed to. And with her son being outside playing and Jack being the only person in the house, it left him. So the manner of her death on her death certificate is changed from suicide to murder, and with Jack being the only one in the house to be able to commit murder, an arrest warrant is issued. The officers go to Jack's house to arrest him, but when they arrive, they see that he's stepping out of his house to go and run some errands, so they decide to follow him and see what he's up to, and they follow him to the post office, but they arrest him before he has a chance to go in, which ends up being a pretty lucky thing for some woman who was living in the Philippines, because he was mailing another letter to someone that he had met through this mail order bride correspondence magazine and hoping to bring her back. Your missing wife is still missing. Homeboy doesn't skip a beat. When he's arrested, it's one of those situations where his response just speaks volumes. I don't know why I laugh like that. He's in the back of the car and he asks the arresting officer why he's being arrested, and the officer says, "For the murder of your wife." And Jack says, "Which one?" When he arrives at jail, he is not cooperating. They just toss him right in a cell. I don't know if that's really how it works, but I'm assuming. But a few days later, someone does decide to talk, and it's Jack and Sharon's son, Randall. He goes to the police station and he says that his father asked him to do something that was just not sitting right with him, and he needed to get it off his chest. First, he says that his dad reached out to him and asked him if he would hide Emilita's cell phone. And he also told them that the day after Emilita would have gone missing, on October 12th, he saw his dad taking apart this couch that he had. It sounds like it was one of those pull-out bed couches, and his dad took out that whole mattress part of it. And then he saw him load it into the back of his truck, and it was missing the two side arms on it so that it could fit in the back box of the truck. Truck box. Truck cab? The back of the truck. Later on that day, when he sees his dad return, the couch is gone, and then he sees him cleaning out the back of the truck bed where the couch had been. When I was first hearing about this, I was like, what was the point? There's evidence on the couch. Why are you going to go through all that trouble? Just pack it and just toss it somewhere. Which is why I'm not a detective, because the detectives knew why. And they suspected that Jack had put Emilita's body in this couch so no one would see him disposing of her body. They also learned that he had replaced the carpet that was in that room and hired somebody to come and put new carpet in and paid them to take the old carpet out. Another thing Randall said that his dad did that he was a little bit confused about but didn't really want to judge because he didn't know if that's how his dad was just coping with the disappearance of his wife, was that he had gone camping at this area called Lake Whitney, which is an area that the family camped a lot at throughout the years. I guess this is a known area. It's a very large wooded area, very dense, and it's surrounded by Lake Whitney. So the police go to check things out, and sure enough, Jack was registered for staying there for 2 nights the day after Emilita disappeared. They did assemble a team to look for Emilita, but because it was so dense and massive, they just couldn't find her. Fast forward a year, a father and son are hunting at Lake Whitney, and they come across a skull. It's clear to them that it wasn't an animal skull, so they call to report it. When the investigators arrive, they find more human remains, and just based off the area and with Emilita being on their radar being missing, they had a feeling that they had found her, which ended up being right. Forensic was able to confirm that it was Emilita, and now that they had a body, they were able to charge Jack, which they did on October 30th, 1995. On January 22nd, 1996, he goes on trial for Sharon's murder. It was pretty much the reenactment photo that the jury saw that Sharon couldn't have been the one to pull the trigger with her toe that sealed Jack's fate. He was found guilty of her murder after 17 years of getting away with it. In 1996, when he was charged, the maximum sentence was 35 years, so that's what he received. Then he went to trial for Emilita's murder 8 months later on August 9th, 1996. By this point, investigators felt that they had even more to prove that Jack was the one responsible and that he was very aware that she was just never coming back. They found her cell phone, her jewelry, her wallet, her keys to her Pathfinder that were found abandoned in a parking lot. But when they were found without the keys. So if you had the keys, I'm assuming you're the one who put it there. It only took the jury 70 minutes to come back with a guilty verdict, and this time he was sentenced to 99 years in prison. There is no doubt in my mind that this man would have probably done this again to another woman, and there is a strong and very valid suspicion that Emilita and Sharon were not his only victims. You may have noticed that I referred to Emilita as Jack's fourth wife, and that's because he'd been married a couple other times, not just to Emilita and Sharon. He married his first wife when he was 18 and she was 15, but that was annulled a few months later. There's not really any information out there that I could find about that first wife. A year after that marriage is when he married Sharon, and then after Sharon's death, he married a third wife. It was a little over a year after Sharon died, and he met her through a mail order bride subscription as well. She was a woman from South Korea named Mayong Chung, and they got married on December 31st, 1980. Not too much is known publicly about Mai. What I could find was that while she was married to Jack, she drowned in 1986. Allegedly, she was floating on an air mattress. She fell off of it into the water and drowned, and it was just devastating to her family because they couldn't wrap their head around why she was on an air mattress just enjoying herself floating on water because she couldn't swim and she had a terrible fear of water. Now, it's not just the fact that she's another wife that's tied to Jack that's dead that raises suspicion. It's also the area that she was found, because her body was found in Lake Whitney. Now, this is also the lake and camping site that Emilita had mentioned to her friends that Jack was really upset that she wouldn't go camping with him at. And that just gives me the creeps, because when you think of this being a real family, I mean, his sons say they always went camping there. It was a spot that they just always went to. And you have this wife who's drowned there. And then when your fourth wife is wanting to leave you, you want to bring her back there too. It just gives me the creeps, because it's like every time he's camping, is he sitting there just looking out at the water knowing that he knows what happened to Mai on the water? And because there were no questions asked, it's why he wants to take Emilita there. That shit keeps you up at night, like side-eyeing your partner. Allegedly, there was bruising around Mai's face that her family noticed when they were saying goodbye to her at her funeral. And her sister confronted Jack about what happened and demanded that an autopsy be done. But since he was her husband, he was able to overrule the decision. And I guess he just canceled the burial that day and then had an emergency or expedited cremation take place. On top of all of this, Jack was not new to taking somebody's life prior to Sharon or Emilita or possibly Mai. In 1967, while he was married to Sharon and they were living in Italy because he was stationed there, he was found guilty of manslaughter and served a 4-month sentence in an Italian prison for shooting and killing a man that he said he caught peeping in his window. I guess he only served 4 months in jail because a petition started in his home of Wichita Falls, and this petition made its way to the president at the time, who was Lyndon Johnson, and he was able to persuade the Italian authorities to drop the charges and release him after 4 months. Hey. Jack is still in prison and eligible for parole in 2026 because he is serving his sentences concurrently. How old is he now? We're not even going to ask Siri this time, you guys. He is 81 years old. Don't let that fool you, though. Listen, if he gets out of prison, there better not be a single person out there that teaches this man how to use an online dating tool like Tinder. I don't know if there's one geared towards like 80-year-olds. Can you imagine the damage this man could do with online dating technology? Just access to everybody at your fingertips immediately. I mean, he was dedicated when he was just shipping mail like across the world, bringing these women back to marry him in America. Remember his face, and if you catch him corresponding with your grandma, your aunt, your mom, you cut that shit off. That's my public service announcement of the day. All right, that is it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. You know I love and I appreciate you so, so much. The answer to today's riddle: the more these are taken, the more they are left behind. What are they? The answer is footsteps. Maybe one day I won't do like that. All right, I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.